We will talk about what happened to baby Jane after Schafer went to jail for fraud, how Schafer tried to piece his life back together again, and how his life ended. Then, we will move forward to Rosa Lee's decision to divorce Oliver and how he moved onward with his life. Again, we must state that this is not a smear campaign against the memory of Oliver Napoleon Hill. This is simply a look at one of Appalachia's most prominent people and how he truthfully lived his life. His legacy, like all people, is very complex, containing both good and bad. We leave it up to our viewers and readers to decide if Hill was a flim-flam artist or a man who simply lived his life before his time. All aboard! The Kentucky Tennessee Living Time Machine is ready to depart once again to continue the story of Oliver Napoleon Hill. Please fasten your seatbelts and keep your arms and legs inside of the vehicle at all times. But to get going, we need your help. We still need to fire up that time machine to transport us. Please help us by clicking on the like, subscribe, and bell notification buttons down below. Not only does this fire up the time machine for our flight back in time, but it convinces the YouTube algorithm that we need a bigger vehicle to reach more people who love history as much as you do. Now, back to our story. Whatever happened to the Schafers and baby Jane? The grand experiment concerning baby Jane only lasted 15 months. In December 1940, some reports state December 1941, the master metaphysician suddenly returned the child to her parents, who were living in a New York rooming house. Even though Schafer tried to put a positive spin on this action with the press, saying that the baby was returned because the parents were better adjusted, this simply was not the truth. Mrs. Gaunt had retained the same lawyer as those that had sued Schafer for fraud. In her suit, she stated that she wanted the return of Jane. It seems that Mrs. Gaunt was a waitress at the time of Jane's birth, and she had some sort of loose connection with Schafer. She has heavily implied that Schafer and his followers coerced her to hand over baby Jane. She wanted her child back, and made this fact very clear in the press. The cult had not legally adopted Jane, so they had no legal standing to keep her. Rather than face a losing lawsuit, the metaphysicians relinquished all claims of custody of baby Jane. However, the separation from the nurse, the only stable and constant person in her young life, must have been emotionally traumatic for Jane. According to the source, The Untold Story of Napoleon Hill, the greatest self-help scammer of all time. Quote, bringing baby Jane into the picture of the cult is really the beginning of the end of the cult, because even his most ardent followers, their beliefs are stretched at this point, unquote. Holliday tells me, quote, the money starts drying up, and that's really what brings about all of the problems, unquote. Upon the return of Jane to her parents, Schafer left detailed instructions for the parents to follow concerning her diet and the environment that she should be raised up in. It was clear that the Gaunts had no such inclination to raise their child according to the principles of Schafer. They immediately disregarded the instructions, and the press reported that within hours of returning home, the child was eating prunes, which was not on Schafer's dietary list of acceptable foods. It is unclear if the child known as baby Jane ever reached immortality. There was a report that she was still alive in 2002, that Jane had married, had children, and preferred to remain anonymous. To this day, she refuses to speak publicly about her time as the immortal baby Jane. And what about Schafer and his family? After his 5-year stint in jail for larceny, Schafer tried to piece his life back together again. He opened up a school in upstate New York and published a magazine. Both were devoted to metaphysical issues. However, his reputation was destroyed, and he never again attained his former fame or wealth. Schafer and his wife Cecilia were found dead in their own car near West Nyack, New York in April of 1955. It was very apparent that their deaths were not an accident, but done on purpose. There was a note left with detailed instructions for their daughter to continue to run their school. In the note, they also explained that they felt that there was no other way out of their situation. Rosa Lee files for divorce. The marriage of Rosa Lee and Oliver was on the rocks in the 1940s. Even though the 1940 census shows that Napoleon, Rosa Lee, and Rosa Lee's father, William, were all living together in Mount Doriah, Florida, it is understood that Oliver was rarely home. Rosa Lee suspected that Oliver was unfaithful and hired a detective to follow him. It is assumed that her suspicions were correct, and it was the final straw in the marriage. While Oliver was away on business, Rosalie sold off all the property that the couple owned together, including Hill's Rolls Royce. She found a lawyer, filed for divorce, and left Hill all but completely penniless. But it seems that Rosalie was not done with Hill, as she won most of the proceeds from the future sales of the book Think and Grow Rich. Shortly after the divorce was finalized, Rosalie married her lawyer. This left a stain on her reputation. However, her marriage to the attorney did not last long. She would go under the name Rosalie Beeland from 1956 through 1962. During that time, she was published and was the chief editorial assistant to Popular Science magazine. After the divorce, Hill, with hat in hand, had the audacity to show up at his ex-wife Florence's door to try to get some money. His apologies and charm did not work on Florence, and she refused his requests. After being humiliated, Oliver Hill then traveled to Clinton, South Carolina for unknown reasons. Hill meets William Jacobs and Annie Lou Norman. Shortly after Hill arrived in Clinton, he approached William Jacobs, who was a publisher and the president of Presbyterian College. In their meeting, it seems that the two men bonded over a romanticized version of the pre-Civil War Old South and their hatred of General Sherman. Because of this meeting, Jacob set Hill up in an apartment. Hill began lectures for the Presbyterian College and also began work on his next book titled Mental Dynamite. Also, while living in Clinton, Hill captured the eye of William Jacobs' secretary, Annie Lou Norman, who worked at Jacobs Press. Jacobs Press published Hill's self-help book, Mental Dynamite, in 1941. Unfortunately, it did not sell very well. There are three schools of thought for this failure. The first is during that time, America had entered World War II. With the American people now focused on winning the war, they had little use for self-help books. The second school of thought is that because Rosalie was no longer with him, there was no one to edit Hill's incomplete thoughts into a coherent, easy-to-read version. The third school of thought about the book was simply, it was not very good and filled with nonsense. Mahatma Gandhi. Never one to admit failure, Hill would claim that Mahatma Gandhi had interest in mental dynamite. According to the source, The Untold Story of Napoleon Hill, the greatest self-help scammer of all time, we have the following quote, shortly after the book came out, some friend of mine sent an autographed copy to Mahatma Gandhi in India, unquote, Hill claimed. Quote, and he was so interested in it that he sent an audible here to the United States to look Napoleon Hill up. He wanted to find out if I was a ghostwriter, the real McCoy, or the real thing, unquote. Quote, he had the idea to give wide distribution to that book throughout India. They put me under 24-hour per day surveillance through one of the leading detective agencies, unquote. Now, think about this for just a moment. Hill was claiming that none other than Mahatma Gandhi was a huge fan of his books and wanted to know if he was a real person. Hill never claimed to have correspondence or a meeting with Gandhi, only that he was a fan. During that time in history, Gandhi was busy doing hunger strikes to protest for human rights in his country and major press conferences. As the old saying goes, if you want something, go big or go home. In next week's video, we will finish the life of Oliver Napoleon Hill. He will marry his fifth and final wife, Annie Lou Norman. Hill's wife and the Napoleon Hill Foundation will get into a lawsuit over his final estate. Thank you. Kentucky Tennessee Living would like to thank you for watching our video series on the outstanding Appalachian people. Don't forget to hit that like button, as the more likes we receive, the more likely YouTube is to suggest our videos to other viewers. Also, to receive notice when we upload a new video, be sure to subscribe and click the bell notification button. We thank you for continuing to support Kentucky Tennessee Living as we are discovering the mysteries in Appalachian history.